All right, good afternoon. We're back. I hope you enjoyed that very lengthy and refreshing break. We are here with our 9th voting list, still March 3rd. And we're going to start with, I believe, Senate Bill 101. And Nathan, take it away.
Senate Bill 101 is the first of 2 bills for which there are no amendments, so there's no reprint at your desk. But Senate Bill 101 is a bill that the committee heard at the end of January, and it repeals the collaborative care pilot program within Medicaid, instead requiring the Department of Health to provide reimbursement for services provided in accordance with the collaborative care model on a statewide basis in primary care settings that provide healthcare services to Medicaid recipients.
Have a motion and a second for a favorable. Are there questions? Senator Mounts.
What's the fiscal note cost?
Cost identified by the department was in the range of $8 million a year in general funds.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, and so this bill was part of the ongoing coordination with the B&T committee, and so it has been vetted by them and cleared for voting.
Any additional, Senator Hershey?
Madam Chair, I'm sorry, Nathan, to put you on the spot, but just what does that mean actually when it's been cleared?
Cleared may be a bit of a strong word. So the process is, in order to keep track of bills with significant fiscal notes, there's a coordination among the committees, and one of the mechanisms in place is to discuss high fiscal note bills with the Budget and Tax Committee.
This means that if it were to pass, they can accommodate it in the upcoming FY24 budget, or?
I can't speak like definitively that
Okay.
it can be. I think that's the implication. It's part of it's been, the coordination has occurred, and there's a thumbs up to proceed with the bill.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, I have a motion and a second on the favorable on Senate Bill 101. Are there any additional questions?
I got to vote on this one.
All those in favor of Senate Bill 101, raise your hand. That looks like a unanimous on Senate Bill 101. We'll move to the next bill.
Senate Bill 136 limits the amount that the Secretary of Labor may deduct from weekly benefits payable to an unemployment insurance claimant when recovering overpayments that are unrelated to fraud. So specifically, the Secretary may only deduct up to 50% from the weekly benefits payable to a claimant in the future, or if the weekly benefit amount is $100 or less, up to only 25%. So other overpayment collection options are both related to fraud, and those unrelated to fraud remain unchanged.
I would like to hold this bill just until the next bill hearing.
Okay, the sponsor has asked we hold the bill to the next voting session. So that bill will be held. We'll move on to the next bill. Senate Bill 104, David.
Senate Bill 104 concerns a bill that was passed last year by the Senate and the General Assembly, but vetoed by the governor because it had a mandated appropriation in it. What you have here is Senator Augustine reintroduced that bill this year as it passed the General Assembly, but there are several amendments to the bill. You have a reprint in front of you. Last year's bill established an apprenticeship 2030 commission, and Senator Rosepep also had a bill 413 that established a apprenticeship 2030 commission. So the two senators got together and they came up with this compromise amendment to Senator Augustine's bill. So we can go through the reprint very quickly. It makes the bill an emergency bill. As you can see on the top of the reprint, emergency shows up. And the bill, there's also several folks who want to get on this bill. Senator Rosepep, because he had Senate Bill 413, Senators Hester and Senator Muse also wanted to be co-sponsors. If we go down to page 2 of the reprint, you'll see that by agreement, the original bill from last year added diversity requirements to the Maryland Apprenticeship and Training Council. That was the original bill till it got the commission added in a mandated appropriation. The last year's bill was Black and Latino. This also adds Asian. So I guess the largest share of minority groups in the state would have to be represented on the Maryland Apprenticeship and Training Council. The bottom of the bill makes changes to the Apprenticeship 230 Commission, which essentially brings in Senator Rosa Pep's bill. So what was put in last year and passed has been modified, and most of this language here is now from Senate Bill 413. If you go to page 2, you'll see what will affect you all. And there's 4 members of the Senate and there's 4 members of the House. You can see a lot of the state departments are going to be represented on this group. Members were appointed from the Maryland State AFL, Maryland DC AFL CIO, and also 4 members appointed by the governor with representing a diverse range of employers. That's the new language before lines 3 and 4. And the chair has an additional piece of language added there that says with consideration to including a minority contractor appointed by the governor. So there are 4 members who have to have diverse ranges of representing diverse range of employers, including a minority contractor. The chair of the commission will be jointly selected by the governor, the president of the Senate, and the speaker of the House. Starting on the bottom of the page, going into the next page of the duties of this commission, which includes trying to reach 60,000 apprentices by 2030 and have at least 45% of the high school graduates in apprenticeship by 2031. A lot of these numbers come from the Kerwin Commission. Yeah. So it sort of runs this commission in tandem with the recommendations of the Kerwin Commission. And if there's a conflict that arises from any of these recommendations, it would be the blueprint which would prevail. The bottom of the page onto the next page strikes the mandated appropriation in last year's bill, which went to a specified district in Prince George's County. And
You knew that from day one.
and the end of the bill was the actual language that makes it an emergency bill.
Senator Hayes.
David, are there other boards or commissions where it requires the governor, the president, and the speaker?
Well, this
So,
is not going to be a statutory group. This is just a uncodified 1-year commission. So you could do whatever you want here on who appoints who. So-
Yeah, it typically is the appointment of governor confirmed by the Senate. I'm not sure
But-
what the hell.
Well, you wouldn't need confirmation by the Senate for this group. This is just a task force.
Yeah, because it's
Yeah.
a commission, but I was just curious, is there other
With-
things like this?
My understanding of these are negotiated amendments between the president's office and the 2 sponsors. So
Gotcha. All right, thanks.
Senator Reedy.
Thank you. So the fiscal note's all wiped away?
yes, because of the mandated appropriation, the Department of Legislative Services will be responsible for doing most of the staffing of this group with assistance from the various agencies who are involved with the commission. And according to the fiscal note, we can do this with our existing resources because that's just how we are.
You always have language about the membership of the council reflecting the geographic, racial, ethnic, et cetera, diversity. So we're picking, well, last year it was 2 groups, now it's 3. Are we leaving anybody out? Or are these selected because they're the biggest diaspora minority populations?
The original bill specified those 2, and this bill grew beyond that with the commission. The commission actually has very little to do with the makeup of the commission, but so I guess they felt it was a good idea to try to represent another large minority group in the state.
That's probably right. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay, I'd entertain a motion.
Move favorable.
Have a motion and a second for a favorable on the amended Senate Bill 104. Are there any questions? All those in favor, raise your hand. Nope, it's a unanimous vote on this zero fiscal note bill. All righty. Thank you very much. Okay, so that bill receives a unanimous report. Next bill.
Next bill is Senate Bill 322. This is a statewide alcoholic beverage bill that currently under current law, Class 4 limited winery licensees, and there's a reprint in front of you because the sponsor has offered amendments. So let's go straight to page 3. And you'll see that under current law, these Class 4 wineries can provide these food items at the winery. None of these food items require a full kitchen to prepare any of these things. So what the bill does is that it adds prepare, sell, or serve only. So it clarifies how the food is brought to the customer, but it also authorizes these wineries to have a full restaurant on the premises. And this language is taken from the language that applies to farm microbreweries. So the equivalent, I imagine the equivalency or a winery requires lots of acres, so do farm microbreweries. So it allows these wineries to be in the same status as farm microbreweries and have a fully licensed operating restaurant on the premises.
Okay, any questions? Take a motion. Motion and a second on the favorable. Seeing no questions, all those in favor, raise your hand. And that bill receives a unanimous report. That is 322, Senate Bill 322. Next bill.
Next bill is from Senator Hayes, and it concerns real estate. The process for acquiring a license for real estate appraisal in the state. And you have a reprint in front of you. And what the bill has introduced it would require that instead of spending at least 1,000 hours providing real estate appraiser services as a trainee under the supervisory of a certified appraiser. It would allow the applicant to participate in take a course which would substitute for the hours. And if you look on page 2 of the reprint, you'll see the group here that puts out the course. This is authorized by federal law. So instead of spending, they would still be subject to all the other requirements to get a license. They just wouldn't have to sit for 1,000 hours under a licensed appraiser. You have a reprint in front of you with some amendments. First off, Senator Griffith would also like to be amended onto the bill. So that's on page 1. And there's 2 types of licenses issued under the appraisal board. One is for general appraisal services for an appraiser, and there's another license for it's a higher level of appraisal. These are for certified appraiser licenses. It adds that same requirement for them. They would still have to meet all the licensing requirements. They just would not have to serve 1,500 hours under a certified appraiser. And they could take this class instead.
Any questions on the bill?
Yeah, I do. What is a certified appraiser? What's the difference between the two?
The difference between the two is one is to general appraisal services, which I would take to mean just normal residential. But the higher level appraiser can also do more complex jobs like commercial real
Okay,
estate.
That's fine.
Senator Ellis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Could I be as a co-sponsor? I can't get it out.
Sponsor says yes. Any other requests for co-sponsorship? Okay, Senator Vital.
So you could go take this class and go right and start appraising properties without being mentored or no, okay.
No, I mean, they're still required to do everything else. The only thing they don't have to do is sit for 1,000 hours under a licensed real estate appraiser.
How do they get to their experience? That's what I'm trying to get to.
It's like a virtual, thing. So you still have to have the classroom. You have to do that. But then you have a a virtual experience that's approved by the National Appraisal Foundation that set all these standards. It's just oftentimes it's hard to get an individual to volunteer their time to supervise because they're not compensated for it,
Okay.
right? So they don't want to sit there like the lowest level of appraisal, you require 1,000 hours. Then it's I think it's 3,000 hours is a lot of hours that you have to perform. And a lot of times appraisers don't want to lend their time in that way.
It just concerns me because very often they're appraising something that's going to be a person's biggest purchase of their lifetime. And I guess I'm a little anxious whether or not virtual is enough without any on-hands experience with someone supervising.
Right. So this was approved by Congress
Okay,
as well.
That's enough. I'll just stop.
Are there any additional questions on Senate Bill 455?
Have you seen some of the people we got running around Congress?
I'll entertain a motion.
Thanks.
Have a motion and a second for Senate Bill 455 as amended with the Ellis Amendment as well. All those in favor, raise your hand. Seeing no opposition, that bill receives a unanimous report. Next bill.
Senate Bill 498 repeals the rural health language that established a rural health collaborative pilot project for the Mid-Shore. The purpose of this collaborative was to develop a rural health system. And within this collaboration, there would be an executive committee and a director. And also there was language that would require the government to put money in the budget for this collaborative. So all of that language is repealed. And instead, the bill just establishes that the governor shall basically continue funding the collaborative at its current level, which I believe is about $150,000.
Second,
Motion second. All those, any questions? All those in favor, raise your hand. That bill receives a unanimous favorable report. Next bill.
Next bill is a local alcoholic beverage bill from Charles County. We've got a letter from the two Charles County senators. And that is Senate Bill 519. It specifies that an unlicensed establishment in Charles County, regardless of whether or not it offers or provides live entertainment under the current law, it would apply to an entity that provided live entertainment. Now it says regardless of whether is generally prohibited from selling, serving, keeping, or allowing to be consumed alcoholic beverages, setups, or other component parts of mixed alcoholic drinks. There are existing exceptions which are modified because of the preceding change. But basically now it expands this prohibition to any entity. It prohibits any entity from serving alcoholic beverages. That aren't licensed.
Have a motion. And a second on the favorable. Are there any questions? All those in favor, raise your hand. That bill receives a unanimous favorable report. I think we're shifting to Patrick.
Senate Bill 171. This is a bill that relates to private passenger motor vehicle liability insurance and enhanced underinsured motorist coverage. The bill would require a person who obtains a private passenger motor vehicle insurance policy at the time the policy is purchased to opt out of obtaining enhanced underinsured motorist coverage through a waiver process instead of opting into the coverage under current law.
Vice Chair.
I would like to hold this bill until next voting session, please.
Without objection, next bill.
Senate Bill 184. This is a bill that would prohibit health insurance carriers that provide coverage for diagnostic breast examination or a supplemental breast examination from imposing a co-payment, co-insurance, or deductible requirement for such examinations. I've got a reprint in front of you. There is an amendment on page 3 of the bill. This is based on some feedback from the Maryland Insurance Administration, and what the amendment does is it clarifies a provision applicable to high deductible health plans. Under the amendment, if an insured or enrollee is covered under a high deductible health plan, a carrier may subject diagnostic breast examinations or supplemental breast examinations to the deductible requirement of the plan. So I think the issue with the high deductible plans is that there are certain requirements under IRS rules regarding them to maintain the tax deductibility of the health savings accounts that are paired with them. And so that is the explanation for that provision.
Vice Chair?
I would like to be a sponsor. If you can amend that on. And with that,
I actually want to go that way too.
Okay, can I see the hands of everyone that wants to be a co-sponsor on the bill? All right,
Bring them up.
everybody but, okay, everybody.
okay,
Everybody's on the bill.
and then I move favorable unless you want to.
Okay, I have a motion and a second for a favorable on the amended Senate Bill 184. All those in favor, raise your hand. Okay, that bill receives a unanimous support with everybody as a co-sponsor. Next bill.
Senate Bill 474. This relates to managed care organizations. There's a reprint in front of you, and I'll explain in a second. But this is an emergency bill that would alter the information that must be included in a written statement provided by a managed care organization to a healthcare provider when retroactively denying reimbursement as a result of coordination of benefits. So when a person has two sources of health coverage, coordination of benefits is the process that payers use to determine which payer is responsible as the primary payer. And there are circumstances where an individual enrolled in a Medicaid plan could have another source of coverage. Perhaps, they may have employer sponsored coverage, but they're still low income and qualify for Medicaid. So there are circumstances where there are two payers. Under current law, the written statement, when this retroactive denial is occurring, must include the name and address of the entity acknowledging responsibility for payment of the denied claim. As the bill is introduced, the bill would repeal the requirement that the written statement include this information. With the amendments, the bill more narrowly clarifies that the written statement must include the name and address of the entity identified by the MCO as responsible for the payment of the claim. So this change would make clear that an MCO doesn't have to first obtain an acknowledgement of responsibility from the responsible payer to retroactively deny the claim based on coordination of benefits. So if you recall at the hearing, MedChi came in with some concerns about the bill, and they expressed their view that they wanted to make sure that the statement still included the name and address of the payer who would be identified as responsible. And I think the amendments address those concerns. And moreover, since the hearing, the health department has come in, Maryland Medicaid has come in and has submitted a letter indicating that they think that the bill is needed because of federal laws, federal CMS rules requiring Medicaid to be the payer of last resort. So this is needed to align with federal requirements according to the health department. And by allowing an MCO to retroactively deny reimbursement without first obtaining this acknowledgement of responsibility from the primary commercial payer, it prevents against an inappropriate shift in cost to the Medicaid MCO as the secondary payer. So that's the explanation of the amendments.
I have a motion and a second on the favorable on Senate Bill 474. Are there any questions? All those in favor, raise your hand. Seeing no opposition, that bill receives a unanimous favorable report. Next bill.
Senate Bill 678. This was a bill I think we heard on Wednesday. This requires Medicaid and the Maryland Children's Health Program, as well as health insurance carriers, to provide coverage for all services rendered by a licensed pharmacist acting within the pharmacist's scope of practice to the same extent as services rendered by any other licensed healthcare provider. Under the bill, pharmacist reimbursement may not be conditioned on whether the licensed pharmacist is employed by a physician, pharmacy, or facility, or acting under a physician's orders. And I think the Maryland Insurance Administration had a work group over the summer, and some of the pharmacy, from testimony, some of the pharmacists were indicating that there were some concerns that when providing services in other settings like nursing homes, there may not be a mechanism for them to get reimbursed. And so that is the reason for the bill. There's a reprint in front of you that has an amendment that Senator Beidel is offering. The first is a clarification that was requested, technical clarification that was requested by the Maryland Insurance Administration. And it modifies an insurance-related provision in the bill to reflect that the intent is to require reimbursement of pharmacists for services that are covered under the policy or contract, and not to create a new mandate for services. The second amendment was one requested by health insurance carriers. It would delay the implementation date of the requirements on health insurance carriers to July 1st. 2024, so that they have time to figure out how to do the new credentialing processes.
Senator Beidel?
Change to that date around 12 o'clock today, 12:30. The carriers agreed to January 1, 2024, because that's when most health insurance make their changes and, begin their new year. So they did agree. I don't know if you want to hold it for a new amendment or just simply change July 1 to January 1, 2024.
It's fine to just
Sounds
change
like
it.
a pretty simple change. Does anybody have any issues with the date change?
Went from July to January.
Back up.
Correct, because that's the
earlier.
plan
Yeah.
year.
Okay.
Okay, I've got Senator Ellis.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm curious, what type of services would a pharmacist bill under this authorization?
Yeah, I think there was some reference in testimony to tobacco cessation programs that sometimes they can assist individuals in that type of in obtaining that type of product. Also, if they're administering immunizations, if they're doing that type of work, like in a setting that isn't in a pharmacy, they may be able to bill for that type of service.
So it would be like a, for lack of a better term, service charge or a charge for a visit and for the actual prescription that is administered.
Yeah, it would be the service that they're providing. Everything would still have to be within the scope of practice of the pharmacist, though.
So like they are authorized to do a lot of injections and stuff, immunizations. So in addition to the cost of the actual vaccine, they'll be able to bill for actually administering that vaccine.
Sure.
I served on the work group. Thank you for your question.
Thank
Senator,
you.
Madam Chair, can I chime in? Thank you. So sometimes they go into a nursing home for instance. They might go in and do the vaccines there or do prescription management. So they're not really working under the auspice of their pharmacy, like, their big pharmacy. They're actually going on their own. And so this way they can bill directly. Doctors don't like to deal with, like, there might be a doctor at the nursing home or assisted living, but they don't want to deal with billing and then paying down to the pharmacist. So this just allows the pharmacist to bill directly.
Okay, so thank you for that, Senator. So it's not, there'll be two charges if you go to the pharmacy for a vaccine. This is for a separate visit to, like, say, nursing home and outside of, say, the company that they're working for. And they
Well,
will
the charge wouldn't be any different than what they're already paid for in their scope of practice. It's just at a different place and not working under the auspice of a pharmacy.
Okay.
Because
great.
most of the time they're working either with a pharmacy or directly in a practice.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Okay, are there any additional questions on the amended Senate Bill 474? I'll entertain a motion.
Move favorable. Second.
Have a motion and a second for a favorable on Senate Bill 474 as amended with the new January date. All those in, I'm sorry, 678. I picked up the wrong paper. Okay, we already passed 474. Okay, 678 as amended with the January date. All those in favor, raise your hand. Okay, unanimous. Next bill.
Senate Bill 724. This is a departmental bill that alters the means by which a health insurance carrier must inform a member, the member's representative, or the healthcare provider acting on behalf of a member of the carrier's adverse decision for non-emergency cases. An adverse decision is a utilization review determination that a proposed or delivered healthcare service covered under the member's contract is or was not medically necessary, appropriate, or efficient, and may result in non-coverage of the service. The bill requires a carrier to inform a member, the member's representative, or the healthcare provider either orally by telephone, which is the case under current law, or with the recipient's consent by text, fax, electronic email, online portal, or other expedited means. And there was no opposition to this bill.
Favorable. Second.
Motion and a second for a favorable on Senate Bill 724. Are there any questions? All those in favor, raise your hand. Seeing no opposition, that bill receives a unanimous report. Next bill.
Senate Bill 725. This is a Maryland Insurance Administration departmental bill. This authorizes insurers to offer or provide certain types of products or services in conjunction with an insurance policy at no charge or at a discounted price. The products or services allowed under the bill are those that are offered or provided to educate persons regarding or to assess, monitor, control, or prevent risk of loss to persons. Products substantially related to the insurance provided under the policy or offered or provided to enhance the health of the insured. So these are products that we learned from testimonies such as a pedometer, yes, or for a health insurance policy, or for a property and casualty insurance policy, you know, maybe a smoke detector or alarm system, something like that. The risk of loss a product or service is designed to address must be associated with risks insured against by the insurance policy. In addition, the offer or provision of products or services must be available to all policyholders. Under the bill, an insurer is not allowed to increase the premium or deny a claim if a policyholder accepts, rejects, uses, or fails to use a product or service authorized under the bill. And products or services, when offered as part of an insurance policy, may not be discontinued during the policy term unless the discontinuation is consented to in writing or the result of a uniform modification. The insurance commissioner is authorized to determine by regulation the types of products or services that are allowed under the bill. And the insurance administration requested an amendment, which the chair is offering, and it's reflected in the reprint in front of you, that would allow an offer or provision of a product or service in conjunction with an insurance policy or annuity contract that is primarily designed to enhance financial wellness if the commissioner determines that the product or service includes an enhancement to the financial protection component of the policy or contract. So they apparently requested this addition to more closely track with model law of the National Association of Insurance Commissioners. This would provide for certain financial planning services, perhaps in connection with life insurance policies or annuity contracts.
Okay, are there any questions on this amended version of Senate Bill 725?
Move favorable.
Have a motion and a second for a favorable on Senate Bill 725 as amended. Any questions? All those in favor, raise your hand. Unanimous report. Next bill.
Senate Bill 798. This is the proposed constitutional amendment. The proposed constitutional amendment, if approved by the voters at the next general election to be held in November 2024, this would establish an individual's fundamental right to reproductive freedom, including but not limited to the ability to make and effectuate decisions to prevent, continue, or end one's own pregnancy, and prohibits the state from directly or indirectly denying, burdening, or abridging the right unless justified by a compelling state interest achieved by the least restrictive means.
Okay, Senator Reedy.
Madam Chair, I think there's a lot of,
We're on roll.
there's a lot of questions and discussion about this bill possibly, so I'd just ask if we could hold it for next voting, next week. Next voting session.
Okay, without objection, it's going to be held until Tuesday's voting session. Okay.
Per person.
All right, I think that,
We have two withdrawals
Oh,
that came in today.
we have 2 withdrawals that came in today.
You're on a roll.
Hold on that last bill, that's one of them.
Senate Bill 529. And that is a Carroll County local bill that's being withdrawn. And then Senate Bill 197 is the 4-day work week pilot project. So I'm just finding out now, but I would entertain a motion to vote unfavorable withdrawn on Senate Bill 529 and Senate Bill 197. Is any objections? Raise your hand on the unfavorable. Unanimous. You guys had a great week. Thank you so much. You stuck with us. Good work. See you Monday. Have a fantastic weekend. I will never have a week like last week again. Please tell me, council, please tell me it's better.
Thursday is all cannabis.
Oh, we do have cannabis. I mean, not have it, but.
Maybe that would make the day go by.
It's been a long week. We'll have the hearing on the cannabis bill next week.
Cannabis bills on, so you've got at least.
We've got a long day, but it shouldn't be as bad. We'll have a bowl of gummy. No, I'm just kidding. Meeting adjourned. Have a good weekend.